Testing, testing.
Check, check, 1, 2, check, check, 1, 2, 3. Check, check, 1, 2, 1, 2, check, 1, 2, 3. Check, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. Check, check, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3.
Morning all. I apologize for the delay. We'll get started in a few moments. Good morning, everyone, and thank you very much for attending the February meeting of the Agriculture and Rural Affairs Committee. Again, I apologize for the slight delay. I'm going to ask the committee coordinator to call the roll, please.
Councillor Kitts.
Here.
Councillor Luloff.
Good morning.
Councillor Skalski.
Here.
Vice Chair Kelly.
Present.
Chair Brown.
Here.
And Mayor Sutcliffe.
Here.
You have quorum, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. This is a public meeting to consider the proposed comprehensive official plan and or zoning bylaw amendments listed as items 8.1, 8.2, and 8.4 on today's agenda. For the items just mentioned, only those specifically identified in the Planning Act who make oral submissions today or written submissions before the amendments are adopted may appeal the matter to the Ontario Land Tribunal. In addition, the applicant may appeal the matter to the Ontario Land Tribunal if council does not adopt an amendment within 90 days of receipt of the application for a zoning bylaw amendment and 120 days for the official plan amendment. To submit written comments on these amendments prior to their consideration by City Council on the 11th of February 2026, please email or call the committee or council coordinator. I'd also like to take the opportunity to welcome Mayor Sutcliffe to the Agriculture and Rural Affairs Committee meeting today. Today is a big day in Ottawa for big city mayors across our country. And instead of being there, the mayor has opted to attend our Rural Affairs Committee meeting. And I believe, Mr. Mayor, you are the first mayor since amalgamation to attend an Agriculture and Rural Affairs Committee meeting. So thank you very much for coming.
My pleasure.
Are there any declarations of interest? Just that we're all highly interested. Thank you very much. Are the ARAC minutes 30 from Monday, December 1st, 2025, and ARAC minutes 31 from Thursday, December 4th, 2025 confirmed?
Confirmed.
Thank you very much. We do have a response to an inquiry put forward by Councillor Skalski, item 4.1 on today's agenda. Councillor, would you like to hold that item today? Yes. Okay, so we hold that item and we'll come back to it. Also, we have a Rural Summit update today, and it was listed following the publication of the agenda. And so I believe the Vice Chair has a motion to introduce this item formally on today's agenda. So I'll ask the Vice Chair to read that in, please.
Sorry, Chair. Be it resolved that the Agricultural and Rural Affairs Committee consider the addition of the following motion and associated documentation pursuant to subsection 89, subsection 3 of the procedure bylaw, so that it may be considered at the first ARAC meeting of 2026. Whereas on November 2nd, 2024, City of Ottawa held a rural summit where the Mayor and Agricultural and Rural Affairs Committee heard from rural residents on the most pressing issues affecting rural areas. And whereas the Chair of the Agricultural and Rural Affairs Committee has submitted the report titled Rural Summit 2024 Update, Progress on 10 Commitments to be Received at the Committee. Therefore, be it resolved that the Agriculture and Rural Affairs Committee receive the document titled Rural Summit 2024 Update, Progress on 10 Commitments for Information. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Vice Chair. Is that waiver carried?
Carried.
Thank you very much. I'll just note that we do have a delegate that has signed up for this item, as it wasn't listed on the agenda. I just want to ensure that Kathy has been added to the meeting and will be promoted when appropriate. Mr. Mayor, I'll turn the meeting over to you. You're the captain now.
Okay. Thank you, Chair. Good morning, everyone. Bonjour tout le monde. Je suis très heureux d'être ici avec vous à la Commission de l'Agriculture et des Affaires Rurales. It's really great to be with you here at today's committee meeting. And we're talking about some important stuff and some important progress that we've made today. And I just want to reflect on the fact that every time I visit one of our rural communities, I'm reminded of something simple but powerful. This is where the story of our community and our country begins. This is where our food is grown, where our traditions are preserved, where families build lives rooted in hard work, generosity, and community spirit. La région rurale d'Ottawa ne fait pas seulement partie de notre ville, elle est le fondement même de notre communauté. Rural Ottawa isn't just part of our city, it's the foundation of our community. The heart of rural Ottawa has 26 villages and 12 hamlets, and it makes up, as David often reminds me, 80% of the city's geography. I actually learned a lot about Ottawa's rural communities during my career as a journalist and broadcaster, particularly when I was on CFRA. I spent a lot of time speaking with farmers and residents of rural villages. I attended a lot of community events in rural Ottawa, including the agricultural fairs. When I became mayor, I continued to connect with and learn from our rural residents, and I started a series of rural and farm tours. I remember recording a video at John and Louise Hill's dairy farm, in which I said something that I believed then and continue to believe now. We want to make sure, we have to make sure that rural residents feel included in the decisions that shape our city. You deserve to see your priorities reflected in our budgets, our policies, and our long-term planning. And you deserve a city government that recognizes the unique challenges and opportunities of rural life. I feel just as strongly about that today as I did then. Over the past 3 years, we've taken meaningful steps to turn those words into action. Au cours des 3 dernières années, nous avons pris des mesures significatives pour transformer ces paroles en actes. To begin with, we kept our promise to host a rural summit, the first rural summit in Ottawa in more than 15 years. At the summit, we heard a message that was honest, direct, and deeply important. Rural residents told us they wanted to feel included. They wanted to feel respected. They wanted to know that their voices matter just as much as those in any other part of Ottawa. And they want a city government that understands the realities of rural life, not in theory, but in practice. That message stayed with me. I think it stayed with all of us. And it has guided the work that we have done since. One of the clearest commitments we made was to improve ditching and drainage. Rural residents told us that this work is essential, not optional, essential for protecting farmland, for preventing flooding, for maintaining safe roads. We listened. And in the 2025 budget, we delivered on our promise to double the ditching budget to $3.6 million. This is a real investment in rural infrastructure, and it reflects our belief that rural needs must be met with real resources. We also committed to strengthening rural governance. Rural decisions should be shaped by rural voices, and that's why we expanded the mandate of this committee. ARAC now has greater autonomy and a stronger role in decision-making. This is not symbolic, it's real. It ensures that rural communities have a direct hand in shaping the policies that affect them most. Another major priority was improving paramedic response times in rural communities. All residents deserve timely emergency care, and we knew we had to act. With a new dispatch system and strengthened service coverage, we've already seen an 80% reduction in level 0 events in Ottawa, events where there are no ambulances available. So that means more ambulances are available when people need them. It means better safety and protection for families, and it means rural communities are safer today than they were a year ago or 2 years ago. We're working towards improving paramedic service for rural communities in other ways. In fact, we'll be opening, we hope, a new dispatch center for paramedics in the west end of the city that will have a huge impact on rural communities in the south and west of Ottawa. We also heard that rural perspectives need to be embedded across the entire city government, not just in one department. So now every city department has a dedicated rural affairs lead. This ensures that rural considerations are part of planning, operations, and decision-making right from the very beginning. It's a cultural shift inside City Hall, and it reflects our commitment to treating rural Ottawa as a full and equal partner. There were many other items that emerged from the Rural Summit, and Chair Brown will review and update you on the status of the major commitments that were made at that time. We've done more than just keep our commitments from the Rural Summit, though. We're also moving forward with changes that reflect fairness and common sense. We heard a lot from residents about the so-called rain tax or stormwater charge and how they believe this was soundly unfair. We listened. The stormwater fee itself will be removed from rural tax bills starting in 2027. Instead, the Agricultural and Rural Affairs Committee will oversee a rural roadside ditch maintenance levy and related policy, giving rural leaders more control over the infrastructure that matters most to their communities. This change will result in lower costs for rural residents. And at the next ARAC meeting, we'll be bringing forward a rural economic development strategy, a plan focused on supporting agriculture, strengthening rural main streets, encouraging investment, and making sure that rural Ottawa remains a place where families and businesses can thrive. As you may have heard, the Ottawa Police Service is shifting towards a community policing model, a district model that puts officers directly into neighborhoods, villages, and rural corridors so they can build relationships with the community and respond more effectively to local concerns. This approach ensures a stronger and more consistent police presence in rural areas with officers who understand the community and are visible, accessible, and engaged. These are not small steps. They are meaningful commitments delivered in partnership with rural residents, rural councillors, and rural organizations. And they reflect a simple truth: rural Ottawa matters. But our work isn't finished. The message from rural residents continues to be clear. Respect matters, and one size does not fit all. Being heard matters, and we will keep building a city government that reflects those values in every decision we make. I want to repeat something that I've said many times because it's important. I want every rural resident to feel like they are respected and their voices are being heard. Je veux que chaque résident rural se sentent respectés et écoutés. I want every farmer, every business owner, every volunteer, every community leader, every family to know that their contributions are valued. I want rural communities to be proud of their role in shaping Ottawa's future. Because rural Ottawa is not on the edge of our city. You are the heart of our community. Rural Ottawa is a place of innovation, resilience, and community. It's a place where people look out for one another. It's a place that has earned the full support and respect of your municipal government. Together, we're building a city where every community, urban, suburban, and rural, feels included, supported, and valued. A city where decisions are made with rural voices at the table. A city where rural residents can see their priorities reflected in real action. I want to take a minute to thank my colleagues on this committee, the colleagues who serve on ARAC, who have been doing great work. They've been working hard now for the past 3 years. So Clark, Catherine, Isabel, Matt, and David as chair, thank you for everything that you've done. Thank you for being such great partners on all of these issues and initiatives. Thank you for representing your constituents so effectively and raising your voices around the council table. I think you all know that I support your work, and I'm always available to listen to your ideas on how we can improve life for rural residents. Most of all, I want to thank our rural residents. Thank you for everything you do to preserve the character of our rural communities. It's so vitally important to our community. Thank you for everything you do to contribute to our city. Thank you for your support. Thank you for your trust. Thank you for your commitment to building a stronger Ottawa. And I look forward to continuing to work with all of you. Thank you. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I have a PowerPoint presentation, but I'll deliver my remarks. For most of you who know me, I don't ever write a prepared speech, but I figured today I better to make sure I covered off all my bases. Again, Mr. Mayor, thank you very much for coming out today. I think this is important and it shows residents that Ottawa is listening and that we certainly do have their back. The 2024 Rural Summit update before you today is about progress and momentum. It is not a finish line. When we convened the Rural Summit in late 2024, we reestablished what had been missing for 15 years. And that was a direct, dedicated forum for rural residents and stakeholders to identify what is working, what is not, and what we must change to ensure rural Ottawa receives fair, practical, and responsive city services and investments. And to start, I want to make sure that I take the opportunity to thank our 10 Rural Summit champions. These were 2 residents from each rural ward who volunteered their time, their passion, and their dedication to rural issues to bringing about the 2024 Rural Summit. We couldn't have done it without them. I know, I believe one of them is in the room today, Mr. Ken Holmes from Ward 5, proud resident of West Carleton. We really couldn't have done it without these volunteers. They were integral to the entire process. They met with us monthly and sometimes more often than that. So I want to take an opportunity to thank them, and I'm sure my colleagues will echo my sentiments later on. Again, I want to be clear that this isn't the end of the process. There's still much work that needs to be done, and the members of this committee are committed to seeing the priorities of rural Ottawa continue to be actioned with a focus on continuous improvement on the programs and services that we rely on each and every day. I guess the next slide, please. The first thing I want to talk about here is the work that has come about since the Rural Summit in 2024. And again, my colleagues on ARAC have worked extremely hard over the last year and a bit to ensure that the first 10 commitments came to fruition, and we started working on some of the other commitments based on the feedback that we heard at the Rural Summit. I want to thank Mayor Sutcliffe again for ensuring this would move forward. Vice Chair Kelly, who put the motion forward at the beginning of the term of council to ensure that we would have a rural summit, which was seconded by Mayor Sutcliffe. I also want to thank now MPP DeRuse, who was Councillor DeRuse and chair of the committee at the time, for all the work that he did. And I don't know if Uncle George, known to us by that, is on the call today, but we couldn't have done it without George's support, and he's been a fantastic advocate for us in his current role at the legislature in Toronto. So today I'm reporting on the meaningful progress on most of the commitments that we've made, the ongoing work of the others, and hopefully a clear roadmap for what comes next. And I know the Vice Chair has a motion following the presentation today. The first large commitment that we heard about was ditching and drainage. And I'm pleased to report to residents of rural Ottawa that Council approved the new stormwater management structure, which the Mayor mentioned in his remarks, where we were able to move away from the urban style stormwater management, and we're going to create a dedicated levy for rural ditch maintenance and drainage concerns. We were also able to move cross culverts, the culverts beneath roadways, back to the general levy, so all of Ottawa would be able to share in those expenses because it benefits the entire road network. All of this was shaped by extensive rural input, and it was designed to be fair and better suited to meet our needs. Council also doubled the budget for ditching and drainage maintenance. Again, the Mayor referenced this in his remarks, from 1.8 million to $3.6 million this year, and that will increase next year to $5.6 million. This will support a predictable and measured program so we can see the improvements that we need across rural Ottawa. And as the Mayor referenced, the responsibility and oversight for this program now rests with the Rural Affairs Committee. Next slide, please. On governance and coordination, Council strengthened ARAC's mandate, including its oversight role for rural ditching and the new levy, reinforcing that rural decisions must be shaped by rural voices. We also enhanced the Rural Affairs Office, including hiring a dedicated program manager and having 9 rural leads, 1 in each of the 9 city departments. And Laurel, our fantastic program manager, is here in the gallery today. Laurel, we couldn't do all of this work without you, so thank you very much. She's right over here. Make Laurel feel uncomfortable. For years, one of the most prominent concerns raised by rural residents has not only been a lack of access to city services, but also the absence of clear and direct points of contact when rural issues arise. This improvement is already connecting councillors and residents to staff who understand the rural area. And again, Laurel, I know you meet with each of the members of ARAC monthly, and we appreciate the opportunity to speak with you directly on the issues that concern our residents. Next slide, please, Chris. On sale, next slide. I was talking ahead of myself. You can tell I don't have to do this often. Safety and emergency response. So on our safety and emergency response measures, we've strengthened our rural paramedic coverage through increased staffing. We've improved the dispatch system, and we've created satellite posts for paramedic deployment in Richmond, Manotick, Stittsville, Dunrobin, Kinburn, Metcalfe, Osgood, Navan, and Cumberland. In 2022, the Ottawa Paramedic Service met the 8-minute target for life-threatening calls only 62% of the time. But since then, level 0 events have declined by 80%, and continued staffing enhancements are expected to further strengthen medical emergency response across rural Ottawa. Next slide, please. To better match rural growth and improve safety on rural roads, the city approved an enhanced process for evaluating where traffic signals are warranted at rural intersections. The city has already implemented a dedicated rural lens for infrastructure planning and delivery, moving away from the one-size-fits-all approach that can be unintentionally damaging to rural intersections and impose urban design standards on rural infrastructure. Next slide, please. We're also cutting friction from rural landowners with practical planning streamlining, including dedicated rural-focused staff, delegated authority for minor rezonings, and common sense operational improvements for agricultural producers, like enabling a no permit solution for manure drag lines, which I guess I was going to make the joke that it did come up at a city council meeting and the mayor referenced it. This was one of the issues where farmers have to fertilize their fields, but to do that, you need to tank manure down the road. And by permitting these agricultural producers the opportunity to lay the temporary manure drag lines inside the city right-of-way in our ditches, we keep these heavy pieces of equipment off the road and improve safety for rural drivers, for the villages that the farmers drive through, and it reduces the carbon output from farming. Now, what's still underway? Several priorities remain active and require continued attention. We're working to establish dedicated rural programs and a rural-specific priority list for intersection signalization. So rural projects are assessed and funded on their own merits, not in direct competition with urban requests. We're also developing a balanced rural growth strategy that supports village vitality. And as we secured our provincial recognition for Ottawa as a rural city, this designation restored what we effectively lost at amalgamation. This improves access for not only the city, but our not-for-profit community associations and our villages to provincial grant programs, infrastructure supports, and other aids that support and reflect rural realities. And again, I'd like to take the opportunity to thank Minister Thompson and MPP DeRuse for championing that specific win for us and getting it across the line so quickly last year. ARAC is where we keep this work real, measurable, and accountable. We are starting a conversation and we're staying on it. That is why Mayor Sutcliffe and the team here today have committed to hosting another rural summit within the next few years, with planning underway for the next term of council. Rural residents will not have to wait another 15 years for a dedicated forum to raise their concerns. The updates in this updated document demonstrate a shift away from the one-size-fits-all service delivery and towards solutions that recognize the operational realities of rural roads, farms, villages, and the distance-based response needs that are different for us than urban Ottawa. Rural Ottawa is home to nearly 1,200 farms across approximately 2,200 square kilometers. Rural residents represent approximately 20% of the city's population, largely living in our villages and our small towns. Our job is to ensure they receive services and investments that reflect their realities. Again, this is the beginning of the process, not the end, and I look forward to engaging with you all over the next few months. Thank you very much. Now, before we go to questions or statements by members, I'd like to see if Mrs. Black is online. Well, colleagues, as we wait for Kathy to come online, is there anything that you'd like to say, Vice Chair? Certainly, yeah.
Thank you very much, Chair. Whereas the Agriculture and Rural Affairs Committee has received a Rural Summit update, including the Rural Summit commitment updates provided with this item, outlining progress and remaining actions on preliminary Rural Summit commitments and priorities. Whereas continued public input from rural residents, producers, community associations, and rural business is necessary to validate progress, identify implementation issues, and confirm priorities for the next phase of work. Therefore, be it resolved that staff from the Rural Affairs Office draft a report outlining key findings and potential action items that address the top recorded concerns brought by rural residents to the 2024 Rural Summit. Be it further resolved that the Agricultural and Rural Affairs Committee requests that staff include on the agenda for the May 2026 Agriculture and Rural Affairs Committee meeting an additional opportunity for the public to discuss and provide feedback on the Rural Summit commitments and priorities informed by the Rural Summit commitment updates provided. Be it further resolved that this agenda opportunity include a dedicated agenda item permitting written submissions and public delegations focused on the commitment updates and priority setting. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Vice Chair. Colleagues, is there any statements that you'd like to make? Councillor Skalski?
Thanks. I just wanted to also express thanks to all the residents in Ward 20 who participated in the workshops and contributed to the Rural Summit. This was one project that Councillor DeRuse at the time was really proud of, and I know he worked hard to move residents to contribute to this process. I was quite proud to take on the baton on this one and keep the work going moving forward. And I just wanted to say that essentially during my by-election time, I heard from residents a lot about how important updates on the progress of the Rural Summit were to people. And I think, so I'm happy that we're able to provide an update today on all the great work that's happened since that day in 2024. And I know residents too will be keen to hear updates as we continue through May. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Ketz.
Thank you very much, Chair. I feel very privileged to be a rural resident. On my way here, I pass through every transect of our city. And so I feel like that gives us a really holistic view to bring to the City Council table and makes us uniquely positioned to tackle issues of citywide significance and, of course, to bring the rural voice to the table. And whenever I'm speaking to rural residents, I say, we have a really strong team of rural councillors, a really strong agricultural and rural affairs committee, and a mayor who really understands rural issues. And what I love about what we heard today, the update on the Rural Summit, is that we aren't just talking about rural issues or stating what could be better. We made an action plan and we've taken action, and there's real tangible results. And I know that there's going to be more to build on, of course, but I think it's a great start, and I'm proud of the work we've accomplished together. And that could not be done without the frank conversations that we all have with our rural residents every day. Rural residents are not high maintenance, but they are also not shy to give you their honest feedback. So I am looking forward to continuing to have those conversations and continuing to collaborate with this great team to deliver real results. So thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Luloff.
Thank you, Chair. I think that when it comes to demonstrating how important this Rural Summit was, it boils down to the results. And I'm glad to be receiving this update today, or sharing this update today on the work that's been done since the Rural Summit. I think that if you go and take a look at the projects that are being moved forward in the 5 rural wards, you will notice that there is a marked difference than in years past in the investment that's being made in our rural areas in Ottawa. I know as a councillor that is a rural suburban split, that represents a rural suburban split ward, that the majority of the investment that is coming toward one over the course of the next construction season concentrates on the rural area. And that's a recognition of the fact that we are taking rural issues and rural investment very seriously at the City of Ottawa. So it's nice to receive updates and to hear how much we love you, but the proof is also in the pudding, in the investments that are being made in our rural area, and we'll continue to work to ensure that those investments continue between now and the next Rural Summit. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Now, Kathy, I'm told you've been promoted now, so I'll turn the floor over to you for your 5 minutes. You might have to unmute yourself, Kathy.
Hi, can you hear me?
We can now. Go ahead.
Great, thanks. Good morning, everybody. I felt it was important just to make a little bit of an update as a public delegation. Like so many of my rural neighbors, we are unpaid volunteers who are engaged and interested in contributing to our city and our local community where we live, work, and play. The city is fortunate to have such a large army of unpaid volunteers who contribute to their time and their talent for better outcomes. However, in the rural areas, many neighbors are disillusioned and have lost confidence in their city somewhat. I've attended all the rounds of the Rural Summit meetings since amalgamation. That's quite a long time ago. Interestingly enough, though, many of the same issues from over 20 years ago are still lingering. Another term of council is slipping by, with the current slate of council soon to be focusing on getting reelected starting in May. And 4 years have gone by, and what have we done? I'd like to share a little bit of history. This goes back to Mayor O'Brien's time in office. During his time in office, we met with him, a group of volunteers, and he assigned his chief of staff and director of liaison to work with us. We organized what we called the rural tour. It was a one-day event, and his chief of staff and director of liaison attended a sampling of rural issues. So we planned a schedule, we organized lunch, and we took the mayor's office around to give them an example of some of the challenges rural residents face. So we visited a funeral home, someone having problems getting permitting, somebody with a coverall shed that they stored their tractor in and permits and this kind of thing. Anyways, the point of me bringing this up was a small group of rural residents organized the tour. We had participation from the mayor's office. He dedicated these 2 resources for the day. We drove around, we had a picnic lunch. It was a real rural event. Anyways, I just wanted to let you know that after we had the rural tour, the next day we delivered to the mayor's office a completed report that outlined what was the issue, what was a potential solution, and we also delivered a set of photos. So we organized a tour, we went on the tour for the day, and the next day we delivered a report to the mayor's office so they could use that to work on to resolve some of the rural issues. So I just wanted to know, what will it take to move the needle forward on some of these rural issues that have been lingering for many years, decades actually? And can we resurrect the rural tour? Can we take you guys on a tour around the area? Anyways, having said that, we organized that, had the tour. The next day there was a report, bang, done. Anyways, I thank you very much for your time, and I hope we can continue to work on getting this to move forward.
Thank you very much, Kathy. And Kathy, if you make lunch, I'll come for a tour.
We had a great lunch, sandwiches, pickles, drinks, and everything. Picnic basket to boot.
That's fantastic. Are there any questions for the delegate? Seeing none. Kathy, thank you very much. And I know we'll keep working with you and engaging with you over the next few months. And I'm confident that the vice chair's motion will pass today. So there'll be a formal opportunity to come forward at the May meeting of ARAC.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, well, colleagues, thank you very much. Vice Chair, do you want to speak on your motion at all, or? Perfect. So colleagues, is the Vice Chair's motion carried? Carried. Thank you very much. And I appreciate the opportunity. And Mr. Mayor, thank you very much for coming today again. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Now, you're more than welcome to say should you wish, but we'll get into the meat and potatoes of the committee meeting. Then, oh, sorry, is the update received?
Received.
Thank you very much. It's good that I have a bunch of minders up here. Item 6.1, development charge exemption amendment, rural unserviced storage structures. I believe Isabel Jasmine's here and Gary Baker, our program coordinator, may be available for questions should there be any from committee. We have no staff presentation, no request to speak, and no written submissions have been received. However, if there is somebody in the room that would like to speak on this, we'd be more than happy to hear from them. Not seeing anyone, the report recommendations are that the Agriculture and Rural Affairs Committee recommend that council approve adding a discretionary exemption listed under the Citywide Development Charge Bylaw 2024-218 as section 7J1 to read, unserviced storage structures being not more than 600 square meters in an area on lands identified within Area 3, rural unserviced, as set out in Schedule A of this bylaw, and add J1 to section 7, paragraph 3, and 2, adding the following definition under the Citywide Development Charge Bylaw 2024-218 in section 1. Unserviced storage structure means a building used strictly for the storage of goods or equipment and being not more than 600 square meters in area on lands identified within Area 3, rural unserviced, as set out in Schedule A of this bylaw that is unserviced with water and sanitary facilities and does not include a dwelling unit, retail, office, or assembly activities. Is this item carried? Carried. Thank you very much. Next item is item 7.1, Mud Creek Municipal Drain, Part Lot 1, Concession 1 and 2, Appointment of Engineer. Cheryl Beam, our Director of Water and Linear Services, may be available. I see Dave Ryan in the audience here today. There is no presentation, no request to speak, and we have received no written correspondence on this item. So unless there are any questions from members of committee, the report recommendations are that the Agriculture and Rural Affairs Committee recommend council appoint Mr. Andy Robinson of Robinson Consultants, Inc. as the engineer of record to prepare a report that addresses the subsequent subdivision of lands, Part Lot 1, Concession 1 and 2, within the Mud Creek Municipal Drain for council's consideration prior to council making a decision under subsection 65(1) of the Drainage Act. Is this item carried? Thank you very much. Item 7.2, Mud Creek Municipal Drain, Part Lots 4 and 5, Concession A, Appointment of Engineer. Again, Dave Ryan's in the audience. There are no presentations, requests to speak, and no written correspondence. The report recommendations are that the Agriculture and Rural Affairs Committee recommend council appoint Mr. Andy Robinson of Robinson Consultants, Inc. as the engineer of record to prepare a report that addresses the subsequent connection of lands, Part Lots 4 and 5, Concession A, within the Mud Creek Municipal Drain for council's consideration prior to council making a decision under subsection 65(1) of the Drainage Act. Is this item carried? Thank you very much. Next item is 8.1, zoning bylaw amendment 7628 Fluellen Road. Samantha Gachny is the planner on file. Mr. Moody's in the audience here, and I believe Mr. Brown may be in attendance as well. There is a presentation should committee wish it. We have one delegation, and I think they're all going to delegate together. If it's the will of committee to carry this item, does the delegation still wish to speak? Thank you very much. I will say this has been an extremely long road to get here on this file, and I know the residents have worked closely with the city to ensure that their rights were respected and that the landowner did what they needed to do to remediate the site. I also recognize that there are some lingering concerns, and I know within the Planning Act and other regulations, the city's going to ensure that the applicant continues with the forward progress that they've made. I also want to commend the applicant for putting the time and the effort and the resources in to bringing this file forward, and to thank city staff for all the work that they've done. This isn't the end of the process. My understanding following approval today, should it pass committee, there's also the building process that the applicant will have to work through with city staff. So again, my thanks to everyone involved getting it to where it is. It's been a difficult file, and I hope this is the next door that we can close and bring closure to the residents in the community. I'll also just raise for committee's awareness that we have received 3 written correspondence from Emily Schaefer, Brian Zimmerman, and Steve and Brenda Virtue. So if there are no questions from members of committee, the report recommendations are that the Agriculture and Rural Affairs Committee recommend council approve an amendment to zoning bylaw 2008-250 for 7628 Fluellen Road, as shown in document 1, to regularize a salvage yard operation as detailed in document 2, and that the Agriculture and Rural Affairs Committee approve the consultation details section of this report. Is this item carried? Thank you very much. The next item listed on the agenda is 8.2, Official Plan Amendment and Zoning Bylaw Amendment 635 and 891 Jigkinson Road. However, perhaps I'll get staff to provide a bit of an explanation as to where we are, and I think there's a motion from the Vice Chair to defer this item.
Thank you, Chair. We wish to apologize, but we have made an error in the notification for this meeting on this file. So we would ask for the committee's indulgence to defer the item. And I believe we've proposed wording for a motion that would have it go to the next regular or special meeting of this committee. We would work with the clerk's office to see if we can find a date in advance of our next meeting. So this does not delay the process any further, as it was a staff error.
Thank you very much, Vice Chair.
Therefore, be it resolved that the Agriculture and Rural Affairs Committee defer consideration of report number ACS 2025-PDB-PSX0019, official plan amendment and zoning bylaw amendment 635 and 891 Jenkinson Road to the next regular or special meeting of ARAC. Be it further resolved that staff be permitted to include, if necessary, a revised staff report and or supporting documentation for inclusion in the distribution of the meeting agenda with appropriate notice provided. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much, Vice Chair. And I'll just also acknowledge that we did have some other public delegates for this item today, and I'd like to offer my apologies as Chair of the committee. And I hope that they'll come out to the next meeting when this is scheduled so we can hear their feedback. Colleagues, is the Vice Chair's motion carried? Thank you very much. Item 8.3. Infrastructure agreement and area specific development charge for Shadow Ridge Greeley in Councillor Skalski's ward. There is a presentation should committee wish it. We have no delegations registered to speak, and we have received some correspondence. The report recommendations are that the Agriculture and Rural Affairs Committee recommend to Council that 1, delegate authority to the General Manager, Planning, Development, and Building Services Department to enter into a third-party infrastructure agreement with DCR Phoenix Development Corporation Limited for the detailed design, tender, and construction of the required upgrade project for the drinking water plant for the Shadow Ridge development in the village of Greeley. 2, approve an area-specific development charge and enactment of an amendment to development charge bylaw 2024-218 as amended, as described in this report for the financing of future infrastructure for the public service area in the village of Greeley. 3, approve the City of Ottawa 2025 area-specific development charges background study for water and wastewater treatment, village of Greeley, Shadow Ridge, and Lakeland Meadows. Before I ask if this item is carried, I just want to confirm with Councillor Skalski that there are no concerns. Perfect, thank you. Colleagues, is this item carried? Thank you very much. Item 8.4, official plan amendment, 1700 Richardson Side Road. There is a presentation, should committee wish to receive it. There are no delegations, and we have received some correspondence. Mr. Brown. Would you like to provide the presentation to committee?
We can certainly, Chair, if you wish us to do so.
Colleagues? Yeah, yes, please.
Okay, so Planner Gilbert will lead the presentation as they are much more involved in the file than I am.
Hello, everyone. My name's Jerica Gilbert. I use they, them pronouns for the minutes. I'm a planner 2 with DR Rural, and I am here today to present on the details of proposed redesignation of 1700 Richardson Side Road from agricultural resource area to rural countryside, and planning staff are recommending refusal of this application. So on the next slide, the property in question is a 3.31.4 hectare parcel. As you can see with the red star there, it's adjacent to the western urban boundary. As I mentioned before, the official plan designation is the agricultural resource area, and it is zoned for agricultural use. Now, on the next slide, zooming in, the property is located southeast of the turning circle. Oh, 1 second there. Yeah, it'll be up there soon, between Richardson Side Road and Huntmar Drive. There we go. The irregular shape to the parcel is due to the north floodplain of the Carp River, which is owned by the City of Ottawa. The parcel is currently vacant, but was previously farmed for many years prior to the landowner severing the contract with the tenant farmer in 2019. Surrounding land uses are residential and agricultural in nature. So on the next slide, the proposal at hand appears quite straightforward. The applicant is seeking to redesignate from agricultural resource area to rural countryside based primarily on the argument that lands are relatively disconnected from the broader agricultural system. They're not proposing any development at this time, but they argue that it would be better if the site was redesignated to rural countryside to reflect how the land is currently used. To support their claim, they have submitted an agricultural impact assessment amongst other routine studies we see for official plan amendments. Agricultural impact assessments are a newer study requirement by the province, and they're meant to understand how a proposed project, policy, or land use change will affect the agricultural system within a community. Now, on the next slide, I'm going to be talking for quite a bit, just because staff have significant concerns with this proposal, despite the materials that have been submitted by the applicant. So using the LEAR system, LEAR standing for Land Evaluation and Area Review, the agricultural impact assessment provided by the applicant says that the LEAR score has decreased by 33.77 points from 157.14 in 2016 when they were last evaluated to 123.37 in 2025. The threshold in Ottawa for identifying the agricultural resource area during an official plan review is 125 LEAR points. So we're 1.7 points below now. A large part of this decrease is due to a decrease in what's called the AR1 score, which indicates how much of the parcel is currently being cultivated for agricultural production. It's down 30 points since the landowner has not been farming the lands. And the agricultural impact assessment does note that the property is made up of class 2 and class 3 soils, which is a key criteria under the provincial planning statement for identifying prime agricultural land. Now, planning is pursuing a peer review of this agricultural impact statement by Colville, just to ensure that the study's methodology is sound. That being said, we're still bringing forward a recommendation for refusal to you today on the basis that the redesignation of a lot on a piecemeal basis does not meet the intention of the PPS or the official plan to protect farmland and the agricultural system as a whole, regardless of whether the subject lands have a LEAR score below 125 points. The property is under the 250 hectare contiguous area required by the official plan to consider removal, and the city has not agreed on contemplating a lesser amount of land at this time. Further, and while I do want to emphasize this policy was not in effect at the time the application was submitted, Official Plan Amendment 46, which was known last year as the Official Plan Amendment for Consistency with the Provincial Planning Statement 2024, bit of a mouthful, removed the option for the city to consider a lesser amount than 250 hectares, which indicates to staff that council is not supportive of considering smaller parcels of agricultural resource area designation for removal at this time. And while it might seem beneficial that they're not proposing any development right now, redesignation for the sake of redesignating farmland is problematic when considering the agricultural system, especially when you're so close to the urban boundary. Redesignation to rural countryside would introduce new permitted land uses on the site, some of which could adversely affect the agricultural system. Regarding the potential adverse impacts and the mitigative measures needed to address those, a large part of the discussion on the applicant's agricultural impact assessment and the planning rationale rely on the fact that they're not proposing a new development. However, if their intent is to maintain the parcel's ability to contribute to the rural economy and the agri-food network in Ottawa, it makes sense to leave the agricultural resource designation in place. In the case of either a settlement boundary expansion or a non-agricultural use being introduced on this site, such as an institutional use, a large-scale infrastructure project, the planning application must consider why the use must locate on prime agricultural lands over any other lands within the municipality. There needs to be a really good reason to remove the agricultural resource area designation, and the tests provided in the provincial planning statement are a pretty high threshold. Staff do not believe that there has been a good reason provided in this case. And finally, I do want to emphasize staff's reasoning for refusal goes beyond whether this specific site is suitable for farming. The reality is that the closer farmland is to the urban boundary, the harder it is for farming to survive over time. Land use conflicts between regular farm practices and residents increase. Farming becomes economically more difficult due to rising land values, and the agricultural land base is more prone to fragmentation. There must be a border or an edge between the urban boundary and the wider carp agricultural system somewhere in this location. If there is no development proposed for 1700 Richardson Side Road, the site still has value in preserving the edge within the peri-urban area and discouraging further urban encroachments into the rural area, regardless of the site's Lear score. As such, staff's recommendation to committee is that this application is refused and that the site remains agricultural resource area. Happy to answer any questions. Thank you for letting me present today.
Thank you very much for that presentation, Vice Chair.
Thank you very much, Chair. This is a very important topic to me. One of the reasons I put my name on the ballot in 2022 was, to protect our agricultural areas and that identity in our rural communities. There's a staggering loss of farmland in the province of Ontario, about 319 acres every day. So I really appreciate the work that you've done on this file. And I just want to recap a couple of things and make sure I understand everything correctly and that everyone around the table does as well. So this land is zoned AG and has been for how long?
I think it has been definitely since the last zoning bylaw, and I would say since pre-amalgamation.
So
and
a long time.
A very long time,
So
yes.
safe to say that when the current applicant bought this land or current landowner purchased it, that they would have been fully aware that this is AG land.
I don't think we know exactly when they acquired it, Vice Chair, but certainly it's been
Yeah.
zoned agricultural and designated agricultural for a
And,
long time.
Provincial policy prevents development on agricultural land, correct?
That's correct.
So
Yes, there's, agricultural related development that's permitted, but certainly not residential development. That's right.
would you say the applicants in this case are experienced developers?
Yes,
So would have known that this land can't be developed at the
Yes.
time of purchase. Okay, just wanted to make sure that. And you had mentioned that one of their arguments was that it's disconnected from the greater agricultural system. I drive through here all the time and I might not have it exactly correct, but it's my understanding that, one side is Arcadia development in Ward 4. The property we're talking about lands in Ward 5 and is AG. And then on I'm not sure, I think it would be the south side. Anyway, one of the sides has there's ag land surrounding this area and on the other side of Richardson Side Road, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so
yes.
not removed from the greater agricultural system in the area. Is it to the best of your knowledge, is it the current landowner that terminated the contract or relationship with the farmer that was farming this land?
I believe it's either the planning rationale or the agricultural impact assessment. It is said that this current landowner terminated the contract, yes.
And one of the arguments that they've used in terms of the reduction in the Lear score is that the land's not currently being farmed.
Yes, that is a weighted factor in the Lear evaluation system.
Okay.
Yeah.
Quite an argument. Okay, so I think this is obvious that this should be a no, and I appreciate the work that you've done. I hope that my colleagues will support the recommendation as well. I think this is how it happens. Like I said, I drive through this all the time. When that sign went up for a change in zoning, it wasn't very long that I saw for sale signs on the other side of the road for that ag land. And so you can see how they chip away at the boundary and ag land at the periphery of the rural areas. And we need to find a way to stop that. And I know almost all of my ARAC colleagues were at the Rural Ontario Municipal Association, where we sat down with Minister Jones, the Minister of Agriculture for the province of Ontario, and talked about this very thing. So I want to thank you guys for the work that you've done. and urge my colleagues to support the recommendation. And, maybe a message to the developers is don't buy ag land and then expect to be able to develop it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Vice Chair, and well said. And thank you very much for the presentation. It was well outlined, and I think it helps the public and committee follow along in the process. So thank you very much. Well done. Colleagues, are there any other questions for our planners? The report recommendations are that the Agriculture and Rural Affairs Committee recommend council refuse an amendment to the City of Ottawa's official plan for 1700 Richardson Side Road as shown in document 1, and that the Agriculture and Rural Affairs Committee approve the consultation details section of this report. Is this item carried?
Carried.
Thank you very much. Item 9.1, status update, Agriculture and Rural Affairs Committee inquiries and motions for the period ending 27 January 2026. Is this item received? Received. Thank you very much. Now, before we move on, perhaps we can go back up. Councillor Skalski, I think there's a motion for us to discuss the rural crossing guards. And I want to make sure you get an opportunity to discuss that. And so there is a motion. Vice Chair, I believe you're going to move that one. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair. Be it resolved that the Agriculture and Rural Affairs Committee allow discussion of the following item for consideration by committee at today's meeting pursuant to subsection 89, subsection 4 of the procedure bylaw, being bylaw number 2022-410 to allow for questions for staff. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Colleagues, is that motion carried? Carried. Thank you very much. Councillor Skalski.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. And thanks to the staff who have worked hard to prepare this inquiry. The response. So the context for this inquiry is that there's a community that I have in my ward that has challenges having their kids cross the street to actually get to the school. The residents are looking for solutions, and they have been assessed multiple times on the adult school crossing guard program that the City of Ottawa administers. And they have not been successful in meeting the warrants. So the questions that I had put forward were asking about the warrant criteria and how exactly we determine what schools are or qualify and how we then distribute funding to pay for these schools. So I do have some follow-up questions. I will start with, I guess there's no presentation on the report, so this is, I'll just get right into the questions that I had. Yeah, come on down. So I don't know maybe if it's beneficial to sort of start to give you a little space to explain the warrant criteria itself for those who did not read the response. But I think much of my questions are around the way we assess this program. And so the first phase of criteria and then the second tranche of criteria. So is it possible to just very quickly maybe provide that to folks who are listening?
Sure. Through you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor, for the questions. And so I'll ask Riley Carter with me to start giving you a quick little summary of the warrant process for adult school crossing guards. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor. So each year, every spring, we go out and do an assessment based on requests received from councillors, from residents for crossing guards. So that review is done in the AM and the PM peak periods of the school. So we look at the bell time of the school, and then we do a 40-minute window based on that bell time. Our assessment, we look at JK to grade 6 students crossing the road, and then the conflicting movements from vehicles. From that, we have a minimum thresholds. We need 10 school-age children combined over the 2 periods. And then we also apply, depending on the location, an exposure index value, and then, or a gap study that we also look at. And if warranted, we typically fund about 10 locations per year. And then if we have more locations than funding available, we do a ranking system to prioritize the most the most risk for children.
Can you explain how the exposure index is calculated?
Yep, so the exposure index value is a function of both the kids crossing a certain leg of the intersection and the conflicting vehicle movements. So essentially, children times vehicles. We count trucks as 2 vehicles. And that gives us the exposure value for that leg of the intersection. So we count in the morning and then the PM peak, and we pick the highest of the 2 values.
So I think one of the things that I've heard from folks is that you don't have a lot of kids crossing the road if you don't think the road is safe. So it's a bit of a chicken or an egg situation where you're not going to necessarily get a lot of kids using the space, and parents won't send their kids that way. But nonetheless, if you can just help me. So if there was 10 kids crossing the street, what would be the exposure value? How many cars would have to cross to actually meet that criteria?
So there's 2 different. So there's for an always stop control and there's also for a signalized intersection. For always stop control, for 10 children, you need 350 vehicles.
So part of the, thank you for that, Riley. Part of the question was asking about it, whether we had ever done a jurisdictional analysis and asked other municipalities whether, how exactly the Warren program works for them. I know that you only got responses back from some urban cities, but I'm wondering if you could just explain whether or not other municipalities use different warrant criteria, specifically if they have lower minimums for pedestrian or vehicle volumes.
So when we received the inquiry, we did a survey through the Road Safety Committee of Ontario. We received, I believe, 12 responses from various municipalities. All the responding municipalities use a very similar system to the City of Ottawa, so a pedestrian count and then either exposure or a gap study. Many of the responding municipalities reference the Ontario Traffic Council School Crossing Guard Guide, which the City of Ottawa also follows. From that, no municipalities had any unique warrant criteria. If anything, the City of Ottawa's values or requirements are much lower than across the province. So we require 10 children. There's some municipalities are 50 children, for example.
Okay. So when I was looking at the answer, I understood that both the exposure criteria and the gap studies are really there to determine the level of risk for crossing that intersection. And so those numbers are used to decide how essentially to rank how risky an intersection is compared to another intersection. Is that a fair way of understanding what those assessments do? Like when we're looking across the whole City of Ottawa?
Yes, so the exposure index is a commonly used tool in the transportation industry. So in our context, it's for crossing guards. Transport Canada uses it for at grade crossing. So when to determine to have a separated grade crossing versus at grade. The exposure index is it's an apples to apples comparison. So it just looks at the value for the number of children and then the number of vehicles and the resultant number. So it focuses on interaction and risk. Typically, the higher your exposure index value, the greater the probability of a collision or interaction occurring.
Sorry, so yeah, I'll just add that, I mean, we acknowledge that there's sort of the concept of the chicken and the egg or whatever, that in a rural setting, there are sort of higher speeds and so that sort of context is there of that situation. But we prioritize is the safety of the children and the adult school crossing guards themselves. And then therefore an adult school crossing guard may not be the right solution in that context. And we would look to sort of find other solutions that would be more appropriate. We don't dismiss the concerns, but we would continue to work with you to sort of find other solutions that would be more appropriate for the context.
Okay, so it's my understanding that there are assessments we do that say, is it safe to cross the street at all, whether you're a child or an adult? And then there's components about exactly what's the level of risk. So I understand that. And I think in the rural context, you're probably right. If it's a really fast road or there's some reasons that it's not even safe to be an adult crossing that street, that makes, I can appreciate that. But I think where I struggle is where the actual program itself says it's like, or essentially the criteria is met for it's safe to cross the street. But because of the sheer volume of traffic that is crossing, we won't never meet those warrants. The value is too high. So regardless of, if the community themselves will see it as a risky crossing, and will want to have an adult to help support crossing the street. So I'm going to just pivot a little bit to some questions about what options there could be available for people. So let's pretend in a situation where it's safe to cross the street for an adult or a child. Is there an option for essentially to not have the funded option for the city to pay for a crossing guard? But let's say the school determines that they'd still like an adult to assist. Is that an option? And is there, that's the first question. Is that even an option?
So in the context of sort of having a volunteer to sort of, so they, well, good intentioned, we really, for those school crossing guards, we really want them to sort of have that level of consistency and that there's somebody there, every day, every school day, all weather conditions. And then so a volunteer model doesn't necessarily work well for those kind of sort of circumstances. Having a sort of a contracted service sort of builds in that redundancy of having, floating staff, centralized scheduling, establishing communication networks and things like that to ensure that we all, last minute changes, that we have somebody there. And then so we don't have that's why the city has sort of based our model on sort of a staffed model. There are legal implications as well, and I'm not sure if Sydney Bowles from Legal Services is still in the room today, but the Highway Traffic Act defines a school crossing guard as an employed contracted individual. I'm not sure.
Sydney, do you want to?
No, I agree with what she said. The Section 176 of the Highway Traffic Act is what the city falls under as it relates to school crossing guards, and that requires them to be employed by the municipality. And as part of that employment, they go through training and things like that.
And just to add on to that, the HTA does specify the only person that can use a stop sign for a crossing is an adult school crossing guard.
Right, like it's not an option for a parent to just put on a vest and get out there. That would be illegal. That they have to go through this program, which I think is part of the challenge, is that it's either you meet the warrants and you get a crossing guard, or there's no other option. There's no alternative. There's no, if we are willing to certify volunteers to do this, because like I said, in my view, a lot of the criteria is there to essentially make sure that public funds are spent in the area of most risk, which I think we can appreciate, but where people are looking for options in the space where the risk is lower, but they feel as parent community that it's risky, there's no options there. And that's precisely what I'm trying to unpack is what's the impediment to us being able to provide options for families or for a community that's in that falls in that space. My last two questions are a little bit about the funding side. So can you just clarify exactly how much it costs for the rural school crossing guard program per month for the that we pay for?
We haven't done the monthly breakdown, but it's $14,400 per year for this current, per year for this current school year per guard. And that can vary depending on the length of their schedule for the day. But like an average cost is $14,400.
Okay, and how many does the city of Ottawa fund every year?
I believe we're close to 300 at this point.
Okay. And how many of those are in rural communities?
Currently, there are 2 in rural communities, one in the village of Carp and one in the village of Metcalfe.
And can I just confirm whether it is possible, so realizing that there's only a certain, like you have to meet all the warrant criteria in order to be even considered for funding under the program as it is there the option to use the TTC budget or other city budgets to actually fund school crossing guards?
So the TTC budget is not an appropriate budget for it. That's a capital funded budget that is for assets and infrastructure. Whereas this is a service. I'm not sure if Isabel Jasmine is, I think she's left, but there is an example of a ward office budget being used, approved through a council approved motion in order to use that budget.
Great. Thank you. Thanks to both of you for this. Appreciate it. Thank you, colleagues, for entertaining these questions. Appreciate it.
Well, thank you very much. And I think it's a valuable opportunity to kind of flesh out some of these challenges and the rural inequity. So thank you very much, Councillor. Thank you very much, staff. There are no in-camera items. Listed on the agenda is the open mic session as item 11. However, we're going to hold that just so we can quickly go through a few of the motions that are listed beneath it subsequently, just to clear those items, and we'll release staff perhaps back to their regular duties. So we'll move next to item 12.1, and the vice chair has graciously agreed to move a replacement motion from the motion from last.
Thank you for
committee.
recognizing that. Whereas Rural Woodlands Ottawa has established a productive working relationship with the City of Ottawa's Agriculture and Rural Affairs Committee through collaboration on initiatives such as Living Snow Fence Pilot Program. And whereas Rural Woodlands Ottawa and ARAC continue to advocate for the retention and expansion of the rural tree canopy in support of climate resilience, road safety, and rural quality of life. Therefore, be it resolved that in partnership with the Ward 21 Councillor, the Agricultural and Rural Affairs Committee recommend council approve a small tree planting project at 2155 Roger Stevens Drive, which Rural Woodlands Ottawa will maintain for the establishment period as demonstrated of our ongoing collaboration, and be it further resolved that staff be directed to provide the necessary support and coordination to ensure the project will proceed in spring 2026, including engagement with Rural Woodlands Ottawa and any partners of the project. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much for moving that on my behalf, Vice Chair. And colleagues, just very quickly, this property is the rear yard of my ward office, and I think it's a great opportunity to plant some much needed trees and other shrubs along the creek at Stevens Creek. It's in the floodplain. The city's never going to develop back there. It's located right next door to our roads yard. And I think it's a great opportunity to turn in what is now some grass into something that will enhance our natural environment out there. And I appreciate the opportunity to work on this, and staff for working with myself and my community associations and organizations. And I look forward to seeing some nice trees outside my back window. So colleagues, is this item carried? Thank you. All right, I'll note that list on the agenda 12.2 was a motion or a notice of motion moved by the vice chair on agricultural impact assessments. However, the province has made some improvements in that area since our last ARAC meeting, and the vice chair withdrew that motion. Are there any other notices of motion? Seeing none. Are there any inquiries? Seeing none. That we're coming to that one next. So listed under other business, the vice chair again has graciously agreed to read in a very lengthy motion, and I'll save your voice and perhaps just do the operative clauses. Therefore be it resolved.
There's only one of those, so let's do this. Therefore, be it resolved that the Agriculture and Rural Affairs Committee recommend council approve that the municipal concurrence for the proposed antenna system at 8230 Bleaks Road be extended by 24 months, lapsing on November 3rd, 2026.
Thank you. And just a waiver to add that to the agenda for today.
That the rules of procedure be waived.
Thank you, carried. Thank you very much. Just a little bit of background on this. This is non-contentious. The applicant lapsed their time for this project, and instead of making them restart the process and paying a few $1,000s, we have the opportunity just to extend the timeline and carry forward with the project, which as the ward councillor would be my preference. So is the motion carried? Thank you very much. Now we'll go back up to the open mic session. Mr. Brooks, you're the first man on the list, and for a little bit of history, our former councillor Brooks was the mayor of Rideau Township, and Counselor for the City of Ottawa at amalgamation and the term following that. He is my predecessor and I sit in your office on Roger Stevens Drive. So Counselor, the floor is yours, 5 minutes.
Yeah, forgot about that. Mr. Chairman, before we get started, I'd like to make an open statement, just for those people who may be on Zoom. And it's very quick. Mr. Chairman and committee members, prior to my presentation, allow me to state the following for those who may be on Zoom. First, I met with Chairman Councillor Brown to discuss the full presentation, which you're going to see in a moment. And we discussed part 1, the city bylaws, part 2, Ontario Regulation 41-24, and the MVCA policies. 2, due to the 5-minute rule, only the city bylaw slides will be presented. 3rd, committee members and ex officio members were provided with a full presentation well in advance of this meeting for comment. And hopefully you got the packages. Good, you're shaking your heads. As of today, I've received no comments or inquiries. The presentation that you're going to see is an informal presentation to test the ARAC support for the by a show of hands. And there's one correction in the presentation I'd like to make first. And if you have the presentation, if you turn to page 8 of the presentation, point 3, the word northern should be crossed out and southern should be put in there. That was my error. Now, if we're ready, yes, that's the one. Significant plant species found in the, should be the southern part of North Block. There are 3 blocks there, South, Central, and North, and part lot 19, which we're going to talk about. All right. I am ready. And we're, slide number 1 is page 2. Now, are you going to be able to keep up with me on this? Because I only have 5 minutes, so it's going to be quick. When is 5 minutes going to be up there? Is there, when do we get started here? No, I want 5 minutes.
Let's go, Counselor.
Slide 1, part at page 2, that the committee support in principle the owners of part lot 19, concession 5's request for a site-specific minor variance to the city's bylaw 2008-250, section 59. Slide 2, page 5, the city's official plan, section 4.1.7.9, dealing with the new legal access in core areas of natural heritage system. Based on the studies of defined core area, fringe area, and biosphere reserve. Slide 3, page 6, the experts weigh in determining core areas. Ken Harris, MNR manager. The principal focus of the Constance Bay Sandhills ANSI is the higher, drier open area. Daniel Brunton, botanist, did a thorough EIS on part lot 19, concession 5. The Smith property is the outer limits. Slide 4, page 7. David White, 2004 rare plant inventory for the city of Ottawa. Notes North Block has limited suitable habitat and also few device areas and few sites of important plants. And you can see on slide 5, page 8, the south and central blocks are the core areas. Part lot 19 is in the fringe area. This is one map of 3 for David White. Slide 6, page 9. All studies from the mid-1800s conclude part lot 19 is not in the core area of the Constance Bay ANSI biosphere. The slide you're looking at shows north boundary fire break is not adjacent to the Smith property. Slide 7, page 10, section 59, dealing with the improved public street. Clyde Street, there is no 30-centimeter reserve block between Clyde Street and Park Lot 19. The width of Clyde Street is 20 meters, 66 feet, similar to the travel portion of Bayview Drive. That street has been gravelled by the municipality at one point in time. It is not posted as not a through, unmaintained, unopened, or used at your own risk. And the residents and the tourists use that street all year round. Slide 8, page 12, section 183, 184. EP3 does permit one detached dwelling on a lot fronting a public street. Based on the aforementioned analysis, it is reasonable to consider Clyde Street as an improved street based on the placement of gravel and the present past daily use by residents and tourists all year round. Slide 9, page 13, section 59. A building is generally required to have frontage on to a public street. However, the Committee of Adjustment can grant variances and exceptions to this rule. Amendments have been considered and approved over time. Slide 10, page 19, summary. The legal intent of the plan subdivision was to allow 3 access points onto Park Lot 19. Number 2, Thornton Forest is a very active recreational area. Many use Clyde Street as an access point to cross over Park Lot 19 into the forest area. Point 3, it is reasonable for Clyde Street to be used by the owners of Park Lot 19 as an access point to a new single-family residence built above the 100-year flood standard. Slide 11, page 20.
One more minute.
Pardon?
1 minute.
Okay, sorry. The private lane as an extension to Clyde Street is a reasonable request. Point 5 is self-explanatory. Redefining reasonableness as redefined by the Supreme Court of Canada versus Vavilov, 2019 states, the majority of the Supreme Court judges said that the default standard for review should be reasonableness. This means the court has to look at whether the decision is reasonable. Supreme Court of Canada, case law in brief. Mr. Chairman and fellow committee members, please allow your reasonableness and your common sense to come into play and support in principle the Smith's request for a site-specific minor variance to bylaw section 59.1 by a show of hands, if you wouldn't mind.
Thank you very much, Mr. Brooks. We can't take any unofficial votes here, but what I can say is I was the beneficiary of the more in-depth presentation and explanation. And it, to me, sounds quite reasonable, and I'm sure your client will be served well at the Committee of Adjustment. Is the date been set yet?
Yes, we will bring forth a formal request.
Thank you very much. I'm not seeing any questions from my colleagues, so thank you very much for coming out. Mr. Holmes. No stranger to this committee. And I don't know if Jerry's coming up with you, or we're all friendly here, Jerry, you can come up. There you go, 5 minutes, the floor is yours. Thank you very much for coming today, Ken.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, thank you very much for the opportunity to speak today. And thank you for the high level review of the Rural Summit and the accomplishments to date. Groups like the Rural Transportation Solutions, which I co-chair, looking forward very much to the detailed report from the Rural Summit, because it's important that we have the details of the activities, the actions that are recommended by the Rural Summit, and use those as a basis with which we can address significant problems with the city. So it's an extremely important starting point for us. Rural Transportation Solutions started about 5 years ago. Our work is constantly being challenged by the need to provide good quantified information on the challenges of a rural transportation solution whenever we address the city of Ottawa. Next slide, please. No, back one. No, we missed something there. Okay, the start in this area was working with Carleton University. And we had the opportunity to engage one of the master's students who was looking at rural transportation solutions, worked very closely with him over a period of about 1.5 years. He successfully defended his thesis and recently had the opportunity to present the results of his thesis to a national transportation conference in Montreal. So, building on that progress, next slide, please. We started more detailed work with Carleton University and specifically the engineering students. Carleton University engineering program requires their fourth-year students to participate in what they call a capstone project, where they address a real-world problem and are required to come up with a design solution. I've been working closely with them for a period of about 20 weeks now. We meet on a monthly basis, and they're getting close to their final solution. Next slide, please. A little bit of detail in here, and you can read it at your leisure, but the key thing is the top two lines in blue. That's part of the Transportation Master Plan. Very much, I think, as a result of the work of the insistence of Rural Transportation Solutions Group to ensure that the long-term plan properly reflects the requirement for a significant improvement in rural transportation for the city of Ottawa. So we've got a good start. That's an outline of what their project consists of. Next slide, please. Basically, they've been working on 2 phases. The first phase is to look at the options in which rural transportation solutions may reside and select an option with which they will proceed to develop a detailed solution, a design solution. Next slide, please. Okay, there were a series of about 10 options that we looked at. If you have any questions on any of them, we'll take them during the question period. Next slide, please. But indeed, this is probably one of the more difficult challenges of the university students, was to look at a real world problem with which they were not familiar, to look at a solution within a bureaucracy with which they have not yet been familiarized or to which they've been introduced. And to take those options and to try to develop a scope that's within their ability to handle within that sort of 25-week project within their knowledge base. The arrangement we have with the professor that's leading the program is that we are considered to be the client and the students are considered to be the consultant. Next slide, please. And next. So where we are now, the students have decided on their preferred option, which is an on-demand minibus system. We're looking specifically at the village of Carp in order to narrow the scope to a project that is well within the ability of the students. Next slide, please. So the students are now in their glory. They're engineering students in their 4th year. They're getting into the nuts and bolts of the computer, trying to design a model. An extremely challenging project for them, extremely interesting to watch them develop it. And from our point of view, the most important thing is that these students will be developing a model. This is a model that we can apply to any of the rural villages. So any proposals that we have for specific improvements of rural transportation, we can base our recommendation on a good engineering model and avoid the situation where the city might say, it sounds like a good solution, but we'll have to do a study on that. So we think we've done a good study that will form the basis for any step forward. Next slide, please. Just as a reminder, that's the situation of rural transportation in the city of Ottawa. The green villages that are highlighted are an indication of where there is some rural transportation, tends to be limited and restricted to the peak hours. The red is where there is nothing. The last time the cities did a study of rural transportation was in 2002. And of the recommendations they made, less than 50% of them are in place today. Next slide, please. Students are participating in something similar to what you would recognize as a high school science lab. All of the engineering students are gathering together on the 9th of March to present the results of their study. I'll be sending specific invitations to all the counselors to attend it. But if you're interested in rural transportation, that's an opportunity to meet students who are proposing a very workable design solution to meet our challenges. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ken. I'll let the vice chair go first.
Thank you very much, Ken, for your presentation. As always, it was engaging and thoughtfully put together. I'm curious if you could expand a little bit on why on-demand was selected as the preferred method or approach. I think that does mirror what OC Transpo is doing now in Blackburn Hamlet, maybe. I know there is a successful pilot has been completed, so it does look like on-demand service works in rural areas. Can you explain why that's better than having a regular route or a couple routes throughout the day?
One of the challenges that any municipality with a rural area faces is that the population not only is small, but it's distributed. The demand in the rural area optimistically is about 5% of the transportation requirements, compared to the broader goal in the city, which tends now to be in the 16 or 17%. So it's difficult to develop an economical model based on a large bus traveling on a fixed route with fixed timings. Municipalities basically across the world are identifying that the solution is in a much more flexible system. The flexibility can be totally flexible, i.e. operating with varied time requests and various routes, or a mid-channel, a midway solution uses fixed routes and varied timings. That tends to be the approach that the municipalities are looking at now. Fix the route, vary the timings depending upon the demand. And say that's the process. That's the stage that the students are at now, trying to optimize a solution, handling on-demand requirements. Some of which may come in a day before, some may come in 45 minutes before the time, and getting the computer to come up with the economical solution as to when to run that particular route.
Thank you very much, and I just want to thank you for choosing an amazing village to do your pilot project. Much appreciated. Thank you, Chair.
You're not biased at all. Yeah. Councillor Luloff.
It's a pretty okay village. Pretty okay. How does the model that you're looking at compare to other models when it comes to the pricing of the service? I can imagine that a flexible model would require a flexible investment, obviously from the municipality. I mean, if you go for 2 or 3 weeks and there's only 1 or 2 calls, I can imagine that you're still paying for the driver's time, you're still paying for the maintenance and the operation of the equipment, you're still paying for gas for, I'm assuming that this driver is probably going to get cold if it's the middle of winter, so he's probably sitting somewhere idling. So I'm just wondering if there's a major difference between the cost to run an on-demand service that's, a little more loosey-goosey with the routes as compared to a service that has a fixed route with fixed timing.
I think one of the basic areas that the students are looking at is quite a wide range of take-up in the provision of rural transportation solutions, starting as low as 2% of the population. So the Transportation Master Plan identifies that the current use is about 2.5%. They're projecting maybe 3%, but the origin destination studies are not very good at projections. They're just measuring. I think one of the solutions in the rural area is to build in maximum flexibility. One of the options that we are certainly looking at as rural transportation solutions is to consider the most appropriate way to engage private industry in a solution, whether it's an entirely private venture, whether it's a public-private venture. We're looking for the flexibility that a private company can bring with it. And if I could introduce Jerry Pearson. Jerry has been working with our group. Jerry has a proposal, working on several proposals, different wards, and also complete sort of city worldwide view at solutions that can be introduced. Jerry is very keen on starting small, making sure you've got an affordable model, expanding in terms of additional vehicles or more frequent service. But flexibility is one of the strengths of private industry. It's not particularly a strength of a bureaucracy. So we're looking forward to the proposals that he's going to be making. We're looking forward to the Rural Summit identifying rural transportation as one of the key issues, and we're looking for the support of the Agriculture and Rural Affairs Committee to help private ventures like Jerry's figure out the way to take his proposal, work with the city, and find a way to get the necessary funding to get such a venture launched.
I met with Mr. Pearson, and I find his proposal to be incredibly intriguing, and one that may work very, very well in the East End. You know, given that at least in Ward 1, and I don't want to speak for Orleans South, but I do know that far beyond, we've got somebody who's very capable of speaking for Orleans South, and Navan. But there's a large concentration of people living just outside of our municipality in Rockland and in that area. Which is a bit unique as far as a rural community in Ottawa goes, having another municipality that has a large semi-urban center so close to us. And so I appreciate the work that Mr. Pearson's doing when it comes to engaging this other municipality as well, because it would make a heck of a lot more sense to have an agreement with that municipality as well. If they're going to be traveling through, say, Cumberland Village, it would make sense that we have stops as well, or that we have options as well. So the critical mass of people that are coming in to work in the rural area, not necessarily our rural area, are coming in from Rockland and through the city of Ottawa and hopefully heading to the LRT. What we want to do is be able to maximize the amount of parking spaces that we have at the LRT terminus for Ottawa residents. What I greatly fear is that we open up line 1 and there's not enough spaces at the terminus, you know, after 7:30 a.m. because everybody from Rockland has filled up those spaces. So people drive down there, want to park and ride and hop on the train, but there are no spaces left. I think what Mr. Pearson's offering here is a solution to that problem as well, because if you've got, you know, a $3 shuttle in from Rockland, well, why would I get in my car at all? I'd hop on the shuttle and then get dropped off right at the train station and head all the way in. Heck of a lot more convenient. I can work on the bus. I can work on the train. You know, check up on my emails, and it would. I think that this is something that needs to be investigated further, and I really appreciate the work that you're doing, because it could make a very, very big difference, especially as we're waiting with bated breath the opening of that line 1 extension. So thanks for your work.
Yeah, the solutions in different areas of rural Ottawa can be quite different. The East End is certainly different, with a tremendous population that needs to get downtown, as opposed to the West End, where the majority, more than 50% of the population transportation needs are fairly short distance getting into Canada, sort of staying primarily in the West area. And if we're looking for a good example, we don't have to look very far. Look at North Grenville that has recently introduced a transportation solution based on 3 components. One of the components is to get people from the Kemptville area to the nearest node of OC Transpo as quickly and as efficiently as possible. And another is to serve their rural area to get those residents into sort of downtown Merrickville. And then the third is within Merrickville itself as a village, have a commuter system somewhat similar to what they're developing in Pembroke. So there are varying solutions, and again, it requires a very flexible approach to providing the particular solution for that particular geographical area. And again, one of the reasons that we're very keen on getting private industry involved for the flexibility that they bring with them. We also need to look at, if we're talking about getting people from outside the city boundaries into the city, we've got to do a relook at that rural partnership program that we had. That was the basis of a lot of the solutions that were identified in the 2002 OC Transpo study. There were more than 20 routes that were identified to help get workers from outside the city boundaries into the city. Of those 20, primarily as a result of COVID, there are now 3 of those routes operating. So a lot of the solutions that were presented in 2002 no longer exist because that rural partnership scheme basically has collapsed.
I do also want to recognize that it's not just about moving people in to work as well, right? I mean, we do have in many, not all, as you pointed out rightly on your map, in many of our rural villages, on peak service that doesn't work for people that either are of an age that they don't drive anymore or don't wish to use a vehicle. The reality of many of our rural villages is that they're aging faster than some of our suburban and more urban areas, as well as people move out of the hustle and the bustle of the city in their retirement. And it's important to recognize that these people need to be able to get around too. They need to be able to get into appointments, to pick up groceries, to meet with family and friends, to stay connected to the people within the city that form their support network, going for coffee on a Wednesday afternoon. So I think that it's important when we're building in this flexibility that we don't just concentrate on the peak periods, but also provide options midday as well. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. That's one of the principles that we're building into any of our solutions. It's probably worth noting the city's current emphasis on the concept of a naturally occurring retirement community and all of the challenges they will have in those areas. Within the list of some 28 retirement communities that have been identified, 6 of them are in the rural area. And of those 6, 2 of them are in a ward that shall remain unnamed that has absolutely no OC Transpo service. So we're talking specifically about the villages of Carp and the villages of Constance Bay, both of which have been identified by the city as naturally occurring retirement communities. So how are we going to adequately support those communities and their desire to maintain a social life and a need to travel to medical appointments and a need and a desire to age comfortably, safely in place?
Now, I know Councillor Kitts and Councillor Skalski both have questions for you. So we'll go to Councillor Kitts and then Skalski.
Thank you, Chair. So when I was first elected, I brought forward the idea of on-demand transit for rural areas with much enthusiasm to OC Transpo, and my enthusiasm was quickly dampened by the realities of the cost. So, some of the I guess elements that would go into that Councillor Luloff already mentioned. So I just wanted to say I'm really interested in the next iteration as you continue to work through this on the costing and to like an affordable model. because, you know, with the distance, with the number of residents that might access this, that seems to be the piece. I mean, we did have a successful pilot in Blackburn Hamlet. So I think the model is there, but when we're talking about the rural areas, what seems to be the reluctancy to look at that is the cost that would be associated to that for the city, but for the user as well. So I just wanted to say, I'm really looking forward to sort of what you can put together on that.
We were certainly encouraged to see the pilot project that was conducted in Blackburn Hamlet. We had been hoping for some fairly detailed recommendations coming out of the report, and there really are not any strong recommendations, strong lessons learned from that. The situation was different in that it's basically a suburban solution, not a rural solution. But we will be proceeding with vigor with the city that is purchasing, I believe, 10 minibuses in budget 2026, and I think that is directly related to their understanding of the success of the Blackburn Hamlet solution. So hopefully we'll be able to get them to apply some of those 10 buses to pilot projects in rural Ottawa.
Mm-hmm. And I agree with what you say in terms of, you know, different solutions for different areas, for different villages. I think Cumberland Village, as Councillor Luloff was saying, would be another great example because of the proximity to the LRT. That would not be the same for Navan or Sarsfield. So I do think that sort of customized approach based on distance is also something that I think is very wise. Thanks.
Councillor Skalski.
Thanks, and thanks for this. I'm always thinking about what possible options could exist, and I think this is, I'm happy that you're working with the Carleton students. I just wanted to share that the geography, so sort of picking up on the point that Catherine just raised, the geography of rural Ottawa, we did recently look at how the city of Ottawa could do busing for one particular event was for the Metcalfe Fair. And we had looked at how long it would take to just within our own ward to bring people to the fair and back and make it a reasonable trip for folks. And what we thought could be like, oh, well, this could just be a milk run. We'll just do it like, you know, one loop around and get you to the fair. Once we really got down and looked at it, it ended up being 3 routes that we would have to do to make it a reasonable trip for people just within the ward traveling itself. So the essentially that tripled the cost immediately for the number of fleet that we would actually need to be hiring to do this particular service. And this was just for a 1-day event. So it's not lost on me that there's a fleet component and how big you would have to actually, how many buses you would need to make it a reasonable trip for folks. My question to you is whether that is part of the engineering work that they're doing, is determining exactly what number of buses you would need to, and if there's any parameters or guidelines about, you know, how long that trip could be at its maximum for it to be reasonable for folks.
Again, I invite you to attend the.
Yeah, I will. I'll be there.
the presentation, but certainly one of the early lessons the students have learned is the big challenge, the difference in challenges between serving all 28 of the villages and all 12 of the hamlets, compared to looking at the requirement to get the largest number of people from the larger villages into the nearest OC Transpo or LRT node. And that certainly is that's the focus of the students' work so far, how to get people from CARP into about 50% of them need to get to an LRT or an OC Transpo node. That's their focus. Their design tools have got the flexibility that you can put any parameters in there that you're looking for, which is one of the beauties of any future work. You can change your projection as to what percentage of the transportation needs might be satisfied by rural transportation solutions, by a public transit or public-private partnership transit, and also looking at the difference in need between those working people in particular that need to get into OC Transpo or LRT, and the other component of the population that needs to get around the rural area or to the nearest village in order to look after their daily needs, whether it's grocery, whether it's recreation, whether it's socialization, whether it's a doctor's visit. So there are many different requirements, and the tools that they're developing will allow counselors and community groups who have an interest to input what they consider to be their unique requirements into the tool to see what sort of solution is being recommended.
Thank you very much, Vice Chair.
Well, you just answered the first question I had in terms of the split versus, getting people to OC Transpo hubs versus getting people around in rural wards, because I definitely see that as a need as well. So appreciate hearing from you on that. The second and last question or point that I'll make on this matter is just supporting rural businesses. The Carp Road Corridor, who I imagine you have heard from perhaps as part of this discussion. I hear from them regularly in terms of the challenges they face in getting employees out to those businesses in the Carp Road Corridor, rural logistics and light industrial. A lot of those jobs are fairly mid-level, which are they're needed, and that's great. But a lot of the times those folks potentially can't afford a car or all the maintenance costs that would go along with getting yourself out to the Carp Road Corridor every day. Is there a potential solution here in terms of this on-demand service that might be able to serve that need, or would that be a completely different conversation?
It's a bit of a different conversation, but the conversations have already started. I know Jerry and Roddy have been talking about the unique requirements to support the Carp Road Corridor, and how the solution can be quite different from the more generalized one of getting residents from Carp into Moody. So it's a different problem, likely with different solutions, because they're much more focused. I'm looking forward to, you may see me back again next month at the March meeting, when you're going to be looking at rural economic development, because transportation, as Roddy will tell you, is such an important part of his ability to develop a vibrant industrial community in the Carp Road Corridor. But I know Jerry and Roddy have already had some discussions.
Thank you very much, colleagues, for the questions, and more of a few statements from me. And I honestly believe, and it's been mentioned here, flexibility is going to be the key moving forward. I've said it before, my colleagues will certainly resonate with this, but for many of our rural villages, the only difference between them and a village just beyond the boundary of Ottawa is that we are in Ottawa. We live very similarly to North Grenville, to Russell, to Clarence Rockland, to Carleton Place and Beckwith. And so I truly believe that to move this issue forward, we'll have to rely on our private sector partners. And that shouldn't be a concern or a worry to residents in Ottawa or taxpayers, because at the end of the day, I think what we should be talking about is mass transit. How do we get as many people onto a communal rideshare program or solution and out of their cars? Because it will reduce traffic congestion going in. It'll improve the environment. Hopefully it'll lengthen the good state of our roads. Ultimately, nice smile, Ken, there. Ultimately, I think we have to be open to that. And for us going forward, I know in the report that'll come forward later this spring, there will be a large component on that rural transit option, because it is a priority for each of us as the rural area continues to grow. And last week at council, we approved the new zoning bylaw, where we're going to start increasing the density, predominantly in the urban areas, but in our villages where it makes sense. So we preserve farmland. So we're going to build up instead of out in our villages. And at least that's my hope. And as we see some of the rural villages continue to expand, and I think in my ward, Richmond and Manotick specifically, between those two villages, 93% of all growth in rural Ottawa has been headquartered in those two villages. And those folks are looking for flexible solutions that'll get them into the city and then get them home. We also recognize that public transit isn't going to necessarily get you to the arena in the village next door on evenings and weekends, which is why driving a vehicle in rural Ottawa is still going to be the primary mode by which we get around. But if we can introduce some of these flexible options to get people out of their cars, I think it'll be well received. I also think it's an opportunity for the rural affairs team to continue with the progress we've made on the one size does not fit all model. Transit is a huge slice of the city's pie. In fact, when you look at municipal dollars, transit is the biggest slice of municipal funding. And so surely there are opportunities that we can leverage. I'm happy you referenced North Grenville. I think Mayor Peckford is doing a fantastic job with her council at rolling this out and expanding it. And I think there's opportunities that we can leverage between some of these municipalities and the city of Ottawa. As they move through the rural area towards urban Ottawa, we should be able to access some of those services. So thank you very much for coming out, Ken. I really appreciate it. This was almost an entire agenda item on its own. Jerry, I appreciate you coming out and the work that you've been doing in the background to move some of these solutions forward. So thank you very much. Thank you, colleagues.
Thank you for your attention.
All right, adjournment is the next item on the agenda. I'll note for the committee and public's awareness that we do have a few meetings coming up. The next one will be on Wednesday, February 18th, which is a special joint meeting with the Planning and Housing Committee. And our next regularly scheduled meeting will be on the 5th of March, Thursday, 5th of March. And for committee's awareness, I believe the clerk's office is looking to schedule potentially a special meeting to review the item that was deferred from our agenda today. So thank you very much for coming out. Much appreciated. And committee stands adjourned.